The Tony Hawk series was one of the best-selling gaming franchises of the early 2000s. It has 20 titles, and was at one time on the cutting edge of technology and a critical and commercial success. It has since fallen into disrepair with Activision crapping out a shovelware title at the end of its life, with them owning rights to the franchise. And today, we will be taking pitches for a Tony Hawk revival from 3 different people. Welcome to Armchair Devs, Tony Hawk. Hi, I'm Dan Video Games, the host of Armchair Devs. I have a deep personal connection with the Tony Hawk series, which is why I'm very excited to hear 3 pitches, one of which from KZ Excellent from kzexcellent.com. How's it going?
I'm professional.
Another from Mr. Feel from Mr. Feel's Wild Ride.
Thanks, Dan. I'm really excited to be here. I got to do really well. My mother, younger sister, and child all have a generic anime wasting disease, so I really hope I impress the judges this episode.
And Bob from GigaBoots.com.
Hey, I don't have to stand here and take this. You don't have to vote for him because he has ill relatives.
I'm not here to make friends, Bob. Oh, no.
I'm professional.
We're going to start with some elevator pitches for their concepts, but before we get to that, KZ Excellent, what's your history with the Tony Hawk franchise?
Well, I started playing the Tony Hawk games back on the N64 with the original one, with that iconic blue cartridge. And after that, I played the various sequels. I got really into the Underground series of games, with the concept of getting off the board and having a more involved story mode. And I think after Project 8, I kind of dropped off of the series. Is that typing?
Oh, don't worry about it. I'm just taking notes.
Are you the NSA?
Don't worry about it. So you said Project 8 was your dropping off point.
Yeah.
That's a pretty good one. Mr. Feel, what's your history with the Tony Hawk franchise?
Well, the first Tony Hawk game I ever played was the Pizza Hut demo disc of Tony Hawk 1 that included the warehouse level. And I played that so much that the disc stopped working. After that, I played every single Tony Hawk game, not counting the bad Wii motion control one, up until Tony Hawk's Proving Ground. And after that, I fell off.
Oh, okay. Yeah, Tony Hawk's Proving Ground was the end of the franchise for another subset of people. So I gotta ask, how much did you like Downhill Jam?
Oh, that was a Wii one.
Oh, okay, gotcha. So we move on to Bob to talk about his history with the franchise. Bob, what is your history with the Tony Hawk franchise?
Yeah, I also, of course, started with the first Tony Hawk demo disc, and I played basically every mainline entry, including Tony Hawk 5. Did not play the motion control ones with the special skateboard, but everything else I'm pretty knowledgeable of, so I'm excited.
If you had one complaint to make about Tony Hawk 2X on the Xbox original, what would it be, Bob?
That wasn't the mainline entry.
Oh, you don't consider that a mainline entry. Let me take note one moment.
That was a remake of an old one.
Bob, I've heard hearsay that the version of Tony Hawk 3 that you played back in the day was the PS1 version and not the PS2.
Yes.
Okay, let me just confirm that. Okay. Don't worry about it.
I don't know where we had heard this.
Word gets around.
It was fine.
KZ Excellent.
Yes.
I am ready to hear your elevator pitch. You have 30 seconds. Go.
So, Tony Hawk games haven't really hit the mark in the past several years. The last thing Tony Hawk needs to do is to shoot for anything incredibly ambitious or AAA at this point. So the goal for my project is a back-to-basics game like the original Pro Skater titles. I present to you, of course, Tony Hawk Returns, the S naturally being a cool S. This means a stage-based career mode where you complete a variety of goals within a time limit, and is more arcadey.
Okay, so that was a pretty good pitch. I got some information written down. Let me just finish these notes. Well, thank you for your pitch, KZ Excellent. I'll be sure to store that away. We'll revisit that in a moment. Okay, Mr. Feel, I'm ready to hear your elevator pitch. Go.
Tony Hawk was most successful when it had bizarre, stupid, cartoonish story modes like Tony Hawk's Underground. So my pitch involves bringing that back along with Character Creator and Skate Park Creator, while also having classic gameplay and classic stages. Build your own skate park and help save
I'm
it
sorry.
later on.
I'm sorry. Your time is up, but that was pretty solid. Okay. Build your own. Okay. And Bob, you have 30 seconds. Go.
All right. My Tony Hawk is called Tony Hawk Decades, and it's a attempt to be a AAA Tony Hawk again, following Tony Hawk from the eyes of a creative character who is his friend. You start in the 80s, and you go to each new decade when you go to a new stage, and the stages are much bigger, much like Tony Hawk Underground. Also revamp the control scheme and try to modernize it to make it more suitable for the modern day gamer.
Okay. Thank you very much for your pitches. Give me just a moment to look at my notes. And there we go. All done with the notes here. I guess I'll go ahead and ask you guys some follow-up questions about your pitches. Starting with Bob.
What's up?
Question number 1. What do you think it means to be a AAA Tony Hawk game?
I feel like it needs high-end graphics, large worlds. Let's see what else. The good, actually high-quality soundtrack that we're willing to put out the money to make, to get, because it's going to have a lot of famous tracks.
Oh, okay. Because of the different time periods.
Right. We're changing time periods every time we get to really hit the top hits of each decade.
Okay. One more question before I move on to ask other people questions. What is the tone of the story mode of Tony Hawk Decades?
It's a little bit more serious tones, but still lighthearted at its core. Kind of like a more serious version of an Underground game. Because I want it to be like almost have a heart to heart with Tony Hawk being his friend.
Okay. Thank you, Bob. Next, we'll go to Mr. Feel for some questions. Now, Mr. Feel, you mentioned having classic stages in your game.
Yes.
What are some of your picks for classic stages that have to come back?
The warehouse has to come back. The mall and school both have to come back. Those first 3 levels from Tony Hawk Pro Skater 1 feel like the definitive 3 Tony Hawk levels.
Okay.
And they all fit easily into almost any story.
Okay. Very nice. Very nice. You mentioned details about the character creator and the skate park creator, but when it came to the soundtrack, you didn't really have any details. I would like to ask you what you think the soundtrack is from a production level or genre level.
Well, I think it's very important for Tony Hawk to have a very distinct identity, and I think that identity is best rooted in the 90s culture that Tony Hawk originally came from. So to that end, the soundtrack for this game would be full of classic ska and punk from the late 90s. That era where it kind of became commercialized and trash, but still had a little bit of teeth to it.
Gotcha.
Of course, any amount of money would be shelled out to get Superman by Goldfinger back. Because if one song has to be in a new Tony Hawk game, it's that.
Okay, that's a pretty solid statement. I'm all for that. Casey, excellent. I have one question that I've been wanting to ask you since your pitch ended.
Yes.
How cool is that S at the end of Tony Hawk Returns?
It is drawn with spray paint.
Oh.
It's got little cool lines, like little lightning action lines around it to make you know that it's cool.
Nice. Oh, that does sound really cool. You said you didn't want to be ambitious and you don't want it to be AAA. It's back to the basics. Do you think a story mode or cutscenes at all play into this?
This is going to be shooting for a classic style Tony Hawk experience where it's a normal career mode that is stage-based. that you will progress through. There won't really be any story to speak of.
Okay, so no intercutting cutscenes between those levels. We're just fully authentic, going for the original Tony Hawk experience of level to level.
The idea would be you select your new level, and then they will do a couple little vignettes of showing you pans of different parts of the area.
Nice.
But nothing too insane will be presented here, because we're not shooting for a big AAA title. We're going with something a bit smaller.
Yeah. Third question. A lot of the time with the classic Tony Hawk games, they would show footage of skaters doing bails or really cool tricks as it ramps up, like who all's in the game and what the game is all about, of course. Do you think the intro is going to use archive footage, or are we getting Bob Burnquist on a skateboard today to go out and shoot the intro for this Tony Hawk Returns game?
Now, I've actually put a lot of thought into this exact thing. The intro will be old vintage footage of the various skaters in the game, like doing different moves, the occasional bail. But when you beat the game and you've completed everything, you unlock a bonus secret movie in which the skaters return in the modern day and attempt to skateboard, and some of it looks a little embarrassing.
That's really good. I like the attention to being true to the original, but also stylized in a way that presents it as graceful, but still there's levity with that secret movie. I like it a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, Mr. Feel, I have another question for you. How will you allow sharing of skate parks? Will it be able to be posted online through online servers, or is it going to be shareable in some other way? And as a completely combined question here, what platforms are you aiming for with this?
Yes, your skate parks will be shareable, and we are aiming for PlayStation 4, Xbox One, and PC.
Okay. Another question. What is your PR strategy when the Nintendo fans ask you to port it to Switch?
We'll port some shitty Tony Hawk game to Switch and then say if that sells 8 million copies, we'll port the real game. That seems to be in style now.
Spoken like a true businessman. I appreciate it a lot. Let's see. Switch depends on 8 million sales of Downhill Jam. Got it. Okay. Now, Bob.
What's up?
In your pitch, you talked about Tony Hawk Decades.
Yes.
And how it's taking place across all these years in Tony Hawk's career. Will there be one overall aesthetic for the music and other stuff, or will the soundtrack be aimed at each time period? I'm asking you, will it be nostalgic for each time period, or are we carrying one consistent style across all of it?
No, the whole thing would be, every decade would be a totally different style. Of course, there'll be features to turn that off, just listen to whatever tracks you want. But I think that ideally, when you get to a new era, a lot of it is just like, okay, this is the 90s. This is classic Tony Hawk music. And ideally, we could also change art style slightly with that too.
Oh, okay.
A lot more neon in the 80s.
Art style shift, got it. Okay, and as an additional question, how do you feel about a crossover or a DLC with rocket power?
I have written down, I want Spider-Man in this game.
Okay.
Rocket power is acceptable as well. I feel like that's solid.
Okay, Spider-Man definitely, rocket power possibly. Got it. Now, you Bob, you made one of the most condensed pitches.
Yes.
And looking back at my notes, I noticed something lacking, but maybe it was in your pitch. I have to ask you, is Creative Park a priority for your game?
No, unfortunately, Creative Park is not a feature I feel like we're going to be able to pursue with this.
I see. Noted. Mr. Feel, you said, you were saying with your 90s culture music full of ska and punk from the late 90s, you wanted to have a lot of music where it was like just barely past the full credibility stage where it seemed a bit sellouty. And you mentioned Superman by Goldfinger had to be on the soundtrack. What other Goldfinger songs need to be on the soundtrack?
There are no other Goldfinger songs.
That's a really good answer. Okay. There's only one song by the band Goldfinger. Okay, got it.
What the fuck are you doing? Why would anybody ever hear any other song by Goldfinger? They put out an album 2 years ago. I didn't know any of them were still alive.
KZ Excellent, when you were talking about your not ambitious or AAA game, I noticed a lack of maybe value that we can give the customer. Your game sounds like it may be a cheaper game. Can I ask you about what price level you think it would come in at?
We're shooting for $19.99.
Okay. Now, that brings me to my next question. What do you think would be good DLC for your game?
Now, DLC, we were thinking in the form of some sort of expansion that added additional stages, each with their own set of goals, obviously. A couple of new songs, and various costumes that you can use for your character.
Costumes. Okay.
Different skins.
Okay, that sounds nice. Mr. Feel, what do you think DLC might be for your game, and what price point do you see yours coming in at?
Well, I was thinking our DLC would involve new assets for skate park creation, considering that is a core aspect of the game and even ties into the story mode.
Oh, that's cool.
In addition, there would be soundtrack DLC in case you wanted slightly different music.
Very nice, very nice. Getting that sort of Guitar Hero business where you can sell music, but for one game. That seems like it could be profitable. Bob, what price point do you see yours coming in at, and what's your DLC plan?
Mine, of course, the full $60, $59.99. The DLC, I actually want to do 2 DLC packs. They're big. One for the most kind of goofy. Like there's a future one where it's like on the moon, much like old school Tony Hawk's. Mm-hmm. And also one in the past where you like skateboard with knights. And of course, extra characters. I already mentioned Spider-Man. Hopefully we can get him in the main game, if not DLC. But I also want Darth Maul, Kylo Ren. Feel like we need to really take advantage of the new stuff. Maybe even
Why are you playing this old game franchise? You need to let go of the past and move on. Let's skate, y'all.
Bob, will Kylo Ren have a shirt?
Well, there's optional. It's optional.
Okay, that's a good choice.
We don't want to like scare people away. You need to put in the code to get the shirtless Kylo Ren.
Okay, you hide it, but you leave it there for the hardcores.
Of course.
Nice.
You don't want to leave them out.
I like that strategy.
Bob, in the DLC pack that will be skating with knights, I need to know what will be an unlockable board.
Ideally, it's just the shield with wheels.
Yes, that was the answer I was wanting.
But it might also have a crossbow on it. It's like you can do like Christ Air, but you hold a crossbow out and you fire it upward.
Yeah, but when you do the Christ Air, they capture you and kill you.
Jean of Arc, of course, is DLC content as well.
360 melons are sacrilege.
I hope you make that gap over the bonfire.
Oh, no.
Mr. Feel, I have another question for you. What is the sort of fidelity you're going for, and what is the art style you're hoping to accomplish? Will it be something reminiscent of the original game, something pushing the border now, or something more stylized, maybe cell shading?
We will be a little bit more stylized, not really going for cutting-edge graphics. Something that does the job, maybe evokes the games like Tony Hawk's Underground, while not looking like Tony Hawk's Underground, because that's a little bit outdated.
Agreed.
Something more like a PS3 game with good stylization and lighting.
Okay. Now, KZ Excellent, I feel like you may have something else you want to tell me about your game. So you can tell me about one aspect of your game that you think is important to get out that you did not get out during your pitch, or maybe double down on something you did get out and stressing how important it is to your game.
Okay, so the general focus of the game is its career mode, where each of the 10 main stages and 3 tournament levels have a variety of goals you go through, each normal stage having 10 goals. What I think is going to be a major thing for the game when it comes to replayability is once you complete the game, you will unlock Encore mode, where every stage can be done again in a new game plus fashion with completely new goals that are balanced for a veteran of the game. So you get to return to it on a harder difficulty that will really get the hardcore players in.
Nice. I really like that idea. Very solid. Mr. Feel, same question. Is there anything you wanted to bring up during your pitch that you feel like you didn't get to talk about, or something you did bring up during your pitch that you want to talk more about that isn't crucial?
Well, I briefly mentioned how Tony Hawk needs a very distinct aesthetic. So to that end, in our story mode, the game will be set in the 90s dimension. There will be no cell phones. There will be no flat screen TVs. The most advanced game console you see will look like a Super Nintendo. Sometimes you'll collect VHS tapes.
Okay, very nice. Thank you. Thank you for that info. I feel like that's clarified things quite a lot.
Featuring a cameo from Bill Clinton, impersonated.
Is his cat there too?
You have to rescue Socks the cat as he dangles from a wire over a gap. Grind the wire to save Socks.
Okay, Bob, same question.
All right. I briefly mentioned in my pitch how I wanted to revitalize the controls, like really go back to change it a little bit. And I feel like that can start from the way it feels when you get off the skateboard. I feel like it needs to have a much more grounded feel to it, a lot like Mirror's Edge almost, where the physics go back to a lot more human when you're off of the skateboard, and then it goes crazy when you're on the skateboard like typical Tony Hawk games. I also wanted to have various control setting options. Option for a completely new mode where you use all the shoulder buttons to do your standard moves, like your grinds will be up there, your jumps will be up there, and then a classic mode as well for the hardcore. And also we need to find a way to make spine transfers not feel janky. It's going to be tough, but I think we can do it.
On the topic of spine transfers, what do you think is the most janky part?
It just looks very awkward. You don't know exactly. When you're in the air, it feels like you're kind of just automatically hovering over to the next spine. It doesn't look right. It doesn't feel right. Something's weird about it.
You're saying that you need something more like a bespoke animation.
Yes.
I see. Okay. Thank you all for answering my questions. We're now going to move on to the segment where your competitors get to ask you questions. Mr. Field, do you have a question for KZ Excellent?
Now, KZ, this is very important.
Yes.
What will be the secret level that you unlock by getting every tape?
I'm glad you asked. So, as you play through the normal game, there won't be any old levels from the previous Tony Hawk games, because while it is great that we're returning to the basics, we want a new adventure for the player. But once they complete the game, there will be not one but 2 unlockable classic stages as a reward for completionists, being, of course, the warehouse and the mall from Tony Hawk Pro Skater 1.
Okay. Thank you very much. Bob, do you have any questions for KZ about his pitch, Tony Hawk Returns?
Will there be the return of off-the-board gameplay?
There will not be the return of off-the-board gameplay. Our focus is going to be the original Pro Skater style and refining that as much as possible. That way, if you want to retry a goal, retry a run, it's near instant.
Okay.
Very minimal loading in between runs.
Okay, we will move on to questions for Mr. Feel about his pitch. KZ Excellent, do you have any questions for Mr. Feel?
So, in the various Tony Hawk games, there are always various sponsors for these games. What are some of the sponsors you're looking to get for this new Tony Hawk game?
Well, I was thinking a new Tony Hawk game needs well-known, well-respected sponsors. To that end, our game will feature mini billboards for Golden Corral and also be sponsored by Cheerwine. Be legend.
Ah, nice. These seem
That's
like
wonderful.
fitting sponsorships. Definitely fit the brand here, and I appreciate it.
I feel like you're playing to the judge, Mr. Field.
Bob, please, Bob. Do you
I know your family's on the line, but I don't need this.
Bob, please, stick to the program here. Do you have any questions for Mr. Field
I'm
instead
professional.
of accusations for Mr. Field?
Why are you such a bad person?
Okay, we'll go with that. Why are you such a bad person? Mr. Field, do you have any answer to that?
I'm sorry you feel that way, Bob, but like I said, I'm here to win, not to be your friend.
Wow, that's dedication, and I respect that as a capitalist.
I'm professional.
Do you have...
No, that was your
I don't
question.
Get have
no,
questions. That's fair.
yeah, you used
Fair.
it. That was your question. Okay, now we are taking questions for Bob's pitch. KZ, go ahead and lead for Tony Hawk Decades.
All right, so I'm aware that you have multiple DLC packages that will be put into development. Will they be put into a season pass? And if so, how much will it be?
Like any good season pass, it'll be $24.99. Feel like that's a good price.
Very good.
Okay. Let's see. Mr. Field, do you have any questions for Bob about his pitch for Tony Hawk Decades?
So, Bob, will Tony Hawk Decades have a linear narrative with an overarching story across all the decades, or will each time period have its own smaller, more contained story?
It'll have both, because you're going to be playing as one guy throughout the whole thing. Each one will have a definitive conclusion, but also lead into the next. So yeah, I guess you could say it's more on the style of having a theme that's going on for that decade, and then they resolve that issue, and we continue on. Maybe Bam Margera shows up. I'm not sure.
Bam Margera shows up and is just wearing Virgil's coat.
Get motivated, dude.
Okay. Thank you all for your pitches, your questions. I will go ahead and take the last word from each of you on all of this. KZ, excellent. You have the last word for 30 seconds. Go.
Tony Hawk Returns is going to be a return to form for the series. We're scaling back, trying to get back to basics, and give you a solid game with tight gameplay, and none of the extra fluff that could make this game, a bit worse, a bit out of its depth. Please buy our game. Please. Please.
Thank you. I appreciate you saving me the 5 seconds you had remaining. Mr. Field, what is your last word?
Tony Hawk's Skate Heaven will revive Tony Hawk at its peak, the PS2 era. With a classic story and classic gameplay, you will love saving your own skate park in Southern California.
Okay, nice. Bob, you have 30 seconds for your final word. Go.
Tony Hawk Decades will get Game of the Year. That's it. I'm done.
That's bold. That's really bold. If you all give me a moment, I'm going to review my notes now. Okay, I've looked over my notes and I'm ready to talk to each of you about the problems with yours and then announce who is going to be greenlit for the Tony Hawk reboot. Are you ready, contestants?
Always.
Bob, we need to talk.
Uh-huh.
Now, most of the time when games come out, they announce their first DLC pack before they actually launch.
Right.
And in the modern era of Tony Hawk fandom, Nothing could be more concerning about what exactly exists inside of the Tony Hawk game. Like seeing a DLC pack for the moon, because Tony Hawk 5 had a level on the moon. It had a level in space with neon and rather futuristic looking, and I think that may concern people. And I just figured that's something you should know about your package.
Right, but that's a returning thing, though. That was in earlier Tony Hawks.
Yes, but what matters is how people feel about it now.
I mean, people don't know what Tony Hawk 5 is. Nobody finished that game.
Not even Activision.
Mr. Fuel, I wanted to let you know that I feel really strongly about your sponsor choice for your version of Tony Hawk Skate Heaven. Golden Corral and Cheerwine are clearly aesthetically similar to the best Tony Hawk titles, and I feel like they can fit in perfectly. Your emphasis on Creative Park is also incredibly appreciated and definitely speaks to the core of what Tony Hawk is about. Also, I respect the reason that you're such a bad person. I understand being somewhere to win. KZ, excellent.
I'm professional.
I am very excited to see that S. I am so excited to see how cool it comes out because it sounds really great. I do appreciate your classic tone of your pitch. I do appreciate the staying true to the original core. But I am a little disappointed that there will be no off-the-board gameplay. Though that was a contentious feature when it came out, a lot of people found it easier to navigate their ways around levels using the off-the-board gameplay element of it. So I think that may make it come off as a little bit outdated in that sense. I think the game may not be received as well for that reason. So it is after reviewing these for a long time that I've decided that we're going to go with Tony Hawk Decades. I feel like the game taking place across all these decades and really leaning into those aesthetics will really make it work out. I'm very excited for the marketing team to get a hold of that. I feel like there hasn't been a game that's come to my desk yet that involves pandering to so many different people all at once. I'm very excited to sell some DLC, though I am concerned about that first one. We may want to revisit that and make it into something else. And also, who doesn't want to skate as Spider-Man, Darth Maul, and a shirtless Kylo Ren? I feel like this is the strongest pitch I've heard today. So, Bob, we're greenlighting Tony Hawk Decades. Congratulations.
That's great news. I can't wait to destroy this company trying to make this game.
So every animation has to be mocapped?
Even the ones that are physically impossible?
Yes.
Tony Hawk Decades will be done in one shot.
No camera cuts.
You will actually live through the decades with Tony Hawk. You cannot reload or replay the game. It lasts 40 years.
I go full Peter Molyneux. I like it.
Somewhere between Peter Molyneux and Seaman has been turned into a Tony Hawk game. Bob, when do you expect this game will be done?
Production will probably take 3 to 5 years.
Okay, so be excited for Tony Hawk Decades sometime around 2024, everyone. Thank you for watching. Have a great night. Thank you for listening to this episode of Armchair Devs. Podcasts like this and Big Think Dimension are only possible with viewer support. If you'd like to help us in the fight for good content, please show us your support over on patreon.com/gbpodcasts, where you can also listen to the extended pitches that couldn't make it into this episode.